Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Step's Best Practices Using Cherwell Software. My name is Tabitha Ishman, and I'm the Marketing Manager of Excalibur Data Systems. And I just wanted to welcome all of you to our webinar today, and then just a few housekeeping and logistics before we get started. The webinar is being recorded and the lines are muted. The recording will be sent via email to everyone on the line tomorrow, and then we'll answer questions at the end in a Q&A session, but you can ask questions at any time during the presentation just by typing them into the question section. And then I'll just move on to a little bit about Excalibur, is that we are a leading edge consulting firm guiding organizations through their digital transformation journey. And I know we have a lot of great content today, and so we can jump into the bulk of this conversation. I'd like to introduce our presenter, Mike Estep, Solution Architect at Excalibur Data Systems. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Tabitha. Well, hello, everybody. I'm very excited. I've done this a couple of times over the years at the conferences and user groups, etc. I am Michael Estep, one of the solution architects here at Excalibur. I've been with Excalibur for a couple of years now. Prior to that, just to give you a little background, about 20 plus years, how about that? Within the IT realm, mostly the service desk, a couple leadership positions. And within Cherwell, I've been in that platform since 2010. So I've seen the 4.0 days, and so this year marks my 10th year. So today we're gonna talk about One Steps. I found this nice clip of Angry Birds, and this is the funniest thing. I love this because it actually epitomizes what we really do in IT, right? We like walk those steps and then we fall and then we get up and we figure it out, and we walk the steps again, we fall, we figure it out. But a journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. And I kind of wanted to change it up into more of a Cherwellism. So we've got a journey of 1,001 steps must begin with a single one step. You might not do 1,000 over the course of your Cherwell career. However, you're going to get pretty close. So all of the one steps that we're going to do, we must begin with that single one step. And how do we begin with a single one step? Well, first we're going to talk about where can we run one steps, and then we'll get into some considerations of when running one steps. One of the most common places that I can think of that we run one steps is the button or link label, which essentially is the same thing. We click something, we make an action, and we make it do something, much like the old days with the macros. For those that have been around in the Word space and the Excel space for all the amount of years that I've been in as well, button and link labels, probably the most common place that you'll see. However, question being, what is the most common one step that we will probably ever touch? And I touch it in every single implementation, even if it's an out-of-the-box system. I will inevitably always touch this one step, and it is the email one step. We always have to manipulate it, whether we want to put our company's logos on it, etc. Whether we want it to go somewhere else, we need one created so that I can get notified this. I need one created so I can get notified here, and the team, and our pager system, and etc. The email one step is probably the one that you will touch the most often, even though you'll get into some really complicated one steps that may be behind some of these buttons. Second place that we can run one steps is a business object automatic action. Most folks kind of steer away from this one, but in the biggest scheme of things, this is some of the best places, or one of the best places, to run some things we need to do that we don't need any kind of an interaction. But to run through these, we've got the create actions. Simply is exactly what it means. When you create a business object, incident, problem, change, whatever it is, then I want to run this one step whenever it's created. Save actions. The most common when you're talking business object automatic actions is going to be the save actions. As you can see here, these are out of the box. Take ownership, not available, escalate level 3. All these do something or other on a save. The one thing I will say here is on a save, it will do something. On a save, it will evaluate every single one of these in here. So we might not want to have 50 or 100 of these on a save because we don't want them to evaluate even the conditions of, well, it must equal this before I run it. I still have to evaluate that one step, every one of them that's in there. And the last one that we've got on here is our business object automatic action. State change. State change has evolved over the years. State change isn't so much, I've not seen too many of these actually put a one step in this automatic actions place. State change is when you're moving from a resolved or moving to a different cycle closed. That's the end. It's a state change. We've moved from one state to the next state if we've got especially an incident or change or problem, etc. Then I want to run step. Most of the time now we either do it through an automated process or we do it inline whenever we're changing the states. Or we can also do it on the business object itself in the state changes. If the state changes, update this field to this, etc. So this one isn't quite as commonly used as the save action. Automated process that I mentioned before. So automated process, as most of you know, this process runs in the background 1 to 3 minutes, and it can run any number of things, including one steps. One steps being the most common thing that it runs because of, again, their macros, etc. The examples that I have in the background here is the confirm email. So an email template we'll get into considerations in a moment. I'll kind of go over why we would do it here as opposed to other places. And this one down at the bottom is a time and event. I wanted to show the most complicated one that we've got here. So it's a resolve by deadline SLA. So essentially it's waiting for the event, which is deadline to be modified. So when the deadline gets modified, we're going to hit up and jump to a step back, and it's going to then look at the time. And my time, of course, is whatever I've set the date time there. After it expires on my date and time, I'm going to roll down to the bottom and do my run a one step, which is execute resolve by breached one step, which may send an email, again, most common, may send an email, and it also updates dates of when it breached. It might also update a logical field, I think, on that one as well. So automated process, very useful in running one steps, especially if you need them to just run without any interaction. Email monitor, we've all dealt with the email monitor. We've all seen the email monitor of what things we want to record or update, etc. And yes, we can run one steps. I actually saw a very interesting one step in a user group, I think just about yesterday or day before, that they were using the one step to find the customer, if you will, or the location of all of their sites because they had many sites they needed to do, to link that one and to update their location. And that was done through the email monitor, which would run the one step, do the compare, add an incident, update the incident after there, and put the customer in the place. And if not, then if it blanked it out for some reason, then fix it back. So email monitor, great place where we can run one steps as well, and do any amount of things that we want as the email comes in. Context menus. So context menus, things that we will use in a grid generally. So things that I might want to do for create a note entry for an incident. If I'm a level 1 support and I'm always getting these calls in and they just want to put, 102085, I just submitted that, but I wanted to add in some additional information. I might just right click and create a journal note entry from here. Quick, easy, it's not actually a button, it's a context menu. At the top kind of shows us in our admin where we put these contact menus that we can add these actions to it, etc. Or I might want to print one of these. Instead of doing the whole grid, which I have printed grid, if I right click there, I just want to print one of these in a specific format, a report, a small report, or an incident that just gives me the basics of a report. Changing a status as well. So if it is in progress status, it can walk me through, including popping up those things that I need, like the close code or the cost code, the the resolution description, etc. I could do it from with here as well. Hey, you know what? I needed to close that ticket out because it's no longer valid. I could right click on this and run through my resolve incident, etc. Toolbars and task pane. So if you're using the rich client, you will notice that there is a task pane on the left-hand side. I keep mine mostly minimized and use it only when I need it because I like my real estate. But we have the ability to add both a global and a business object specific one-step actions, whether it's to our toolbar that's on the side or to the menu actions at the top. And the examples of this, we can kind of look at what it's going to look like. So our task pane on the left-hand side, whenever we come into an incident, we'll see our incident actions. So again, and these might be things that I want to add in. So rebooting a computer that can go out and reboot the computer of the CI that I have attached, or create a change for this one, nominate it as a KB. Things that you would also see under your actions in the 10.0 version of the form. But I can do it at the top as well, and these only show up if I'm in the business object. So if you look at the top, we've got incident actions and quick templates, for instance. Maybe I want to, this was a reset password. So I'm going to open a new incident. I go up to my quick templates and fill in all the reset password, verify that it's right, and then close it out. Clone a current incident that I have here, a very good one to put in the incident actions. It kind of frees up when we're talking efficiencies on a form or design on a form, it frees up my actions section, for instance, so I don't have 50 of them over there. The ones that I never use a whole lot, I can put up into my incident actions or whichever business object that you're working in. So we have that ability to put that in the toolbar and the task pane. Many more places that we can run one steps. One of the ones that I did want to point out as well that I didn't get time to put in this slide was scheduled jobs. We might not think about it, but scheduled jobs, for those of you that have users that you like to keep updated with a manager, a phone number, etc., from your Active Directory, knowing that user info is never updated but the first time that you put it in. It never goes back to AD. There's no import that comes in and updates user info. However, everybody is a customer. So all of the customer data is imported daily, whether from Active Directory or wherever you have it coming from. So if I have a way to link those two together with customer and user info, I could run a scheduled job that after my Active Directory scheduled job runs, then run my update user info one step on a schedule, that will then update manager, phone number, etc., and keep my user info up to date. So just an example of the scheduled job. I didn't want to leave that one out because this is kind of a big one. But as we look through this, we see where can we run one steps, and all the places we run one steps, you kind of get the feeling that one steps really is the blood, if you will, of Cherwell. It is the backbone. It is the muscle. It is the body parts of Cherwell. I mean, it really is. It's everything that you can do in a one step is great. Web service calls, all of those kinds of things. We're going to see some examples today of one that I like to really add to a system, and we'll show you in a moment. One-step considerations. So I've got three really big one-step considerations. When somebody comes to us and they say, I need this. I need an email. I need a report emailed. I need, when I do this in my incident, I want it to populate this over here, or I want it to do something. So when we get those requests, the first thing we're looking at is what does the one step need to do? So we have our requirements, and we'll just kind of take the report one, for instance. I need a report email to me. So we start thinking one step, okay, when where do I need the, what does that one step need to do? Well, it needs to run a report, needs to save that report so I can then add it to my email and send the email. Probably attach it to the business object, save it. So thinking through all the one steps, what does it needs to do? It's kind of the first step in our thought process and considerations, etc., which kind of couples along of when do I need it to run? So in the instance of a report and an email, I could probably do that as a scheduled job. Looking at my scheduled jobs, when is the AD import? When do you need this report? Do you need this before a meeting? What is the information that I'm going to need for it to run? Is it going to be a huge report? This might be something that I could run at 5 o'clock in the evening or midnight or 6 a.m. before the folks come in, so they have it in their email and it's at the top, because as we know, we get tons of email daily. So it could be at the top so they could see it first thing when they come in. What time do you come in? Okay, I could run it at 7 o'clock a.m. since you're not going to be here till 8. It'll be in your inbox first thing in the morning. So when does the one step need to run? What does it need to do? When does it need to run? When we talk about when does it need to run, we're also going to be what information is needed for the one step to be successful. When we're looking at what information is needed for the one step to be successful, not only do I need to have fields, so is the report going to need additional information? Yes, I want to report on this and this. Well, it might be duration comparisons. Well, I don't have duration comparisons yet for that particular one. Well, I want a duration comparison of when it's assigned and when it's been, whatever, updated this way, etc. All of those things. If I need additional fields, what are the fields that I'm going to need for the one step to be successful? Do I need permissions? Security? So thinking of, I might put together a survey. Upcoming town hall, I want to put a survey of questions that could be submitted through my portal. I make a great form. It looks awesome. I put it up on portal and I can't see any of the fields. I can see them in the desktop. Why can't I see the fields there? So what information is the one step to be successful? I have to give the portal user security access. Because luckily, Portal, no matter who logs in, has the exact same access. Even if I'm an admin in the desktop, I have Portal access, so I can view Portal as if I'm an actual customer coming in. So I can make sure that the security is set up for it. Inevitably, I do that most all the time. I'll get up Portal, it'll be great, I'll be all excited, and I can't see it, and I forgot the security. So then we go down and get the security. So tying all these together, what does the one step need to do? When does it need to run? Thinking of when does it need to run, can I run it on the AP? So if I'm doing an update email, is that one I can run on the AP? No, because I need to have additional information. So that's an inline one step. I'm going to do it as a button. Resolved email, can I run it on an AP? I can, it's a template. That's never changing until people come up and say, hey, I want this additional on the resolve, but another story. Resolved emails are templates. They can be run on the AP. And the reason we look at the considerations here is we're trying to make it efficient for the folks that are using it the most. Your technicians, back in the day, we used to put the resolved email within the same one step. So when they click resolved, it would also send the email at the same time. That's time that you're taking away. We're talking a couple of seconds, etc. But as we know, the information age has gotten us to where seconds is a long time. We're no longer waiting for the modem beep where it's instant. We need it now. So the most efficient way that you can make your one steps, if I can take any amount of processing off of the end line and put it to an AP or a scheduled job or somewhere else that it's not running. Saved, it's going to do the same thing as if an inline because I'm going to have invariably a save on it. So the most important step, I think, is when it needs to run to gaining our efficiencies, etc. And then what information is needed within the one step? Do I have to create additional fields, etc.? Maybe I have to create a brand new business object to support whatever we're being asked. And with that, we come to our demo man. I like him. He's running. He's ready. He's ready to go to show what we've got going on. So we have an AP one step that we want to look at, and this is one that I like a lot. It is so super simple, but so effective. Out of the box, Cherwell does not automatically read outgoing email. And when I'm talking about outgoing email, these are things service does not need to pay attention to. My technicians don't need them to read the created email. My technicians don't have to read the resolved email. My admin has to worry if they've gone out or not, but he'll normally get pinged by the customers for that. But my technicians don't need to read those. So out of the box, Cherwell makes you read those. And it could be a lot of noise that you could cut out. I implemented this for one customer recently, and they had, at the beginning, 150 unread journals on their widget, which essentially is incidents and X amount of journals under each incident. 150. We ran this, and they actually had 30 that they needed to pay attention to. It was that effective and that simple. So let's take a look at it. Get my demo system over here. So automated process, super simple for mark as read email history. In fact, I put this one in my test system this morning. Let's sort by our business object and journal mail history. So I do this in a couple of different flavors as far as marking things as read. This particular one is read outgoing mail history. So anything that's outgoing, because we can tell the direction of the email, there is a field that has the direction in it. So we've got mail history. When it's created, changed, when do we want this event to occur? And then right here, I break it down. Mail direction equals outgoing. Why do I do it here and not within a one step? Well, this allows me to catch any outgoing email, regardless of the problem, change, incident, etc. It allows me to catch all of those and mark them as read. Rather than, okay, I need to go into the resolved and set one there, and I need to go into the created by or created email and set one there, and the update email and set one there. It allows me to catch all of them in one and makes it much more efficient. And then the action is, you guessed it, just as simple. It's just a mark as read update business object where I flip that flag, marked as read equals true. And then that's it. And I've saved 75% of the time a technician needs to go in there, read their emails, because you absolutely want your techs to be paying attention to the emails that are coming in or the customer requests that are coming in that are legitimate. Hey, where's my thing? Hey, I need to add this to it. Hey, I forgot to add this to my request. Just checking on what's going on. Here's additional information that you asked for. It allows your technicians to concentrate on those, the simplest thing. And an automated process allows us to do that. We don't need to be in inline. We can do that since this is looking at the created, etc., and why we put it here. So let's take a look at a more complicated one step, if you will. One of the more recent ones that I've implemented. So our problem solver thoughts, and this is a button one step. So the ITAM map gives you everything to do for ordering products from your supplier catalog, etc. And it gives you a purchase request. And it doesn't give you purchase orders, unfortunately. purchase orders that it has goes back to CAM, if you have CAM. So I recently created a purchase order object for a customer. And in the purchase orders, the purchase request, we put a bunch of line items in. And the line items could have the same vendor. We may have, in our example, we're going to have 50 line items, but only 4 vendors. So when we create purchase orders, we don't want to have 50 purchase orders because of an inefficient one step. We want to have an efficient one step that will first gather the amount of vendors that I need, and then look at each line item and evaluate if it should be attached to that particular purchase order based upon the vendor ID. So as a button, thoughts on this one when we were looking at it, etc. Can this be run as an AP? Yeah, probably not, because we're gonna have to fill in bill to and send to and vendor after the fact. We need to ensure that they created the 3. I don't want to have to come back and check on this thing, so I don't want to schedule a job or an automated process, etc. On a save action, no, because it has to be approved before I get to this step. I could add it into an existing one step, so really it's a modification where I make the one step on its own. So button was the best way to land for this one. Okay, back to our demo system here. Go into a blueprint that we've put together. So this was for the purchase request. We've created a purchase order business object. So in our considerations of whenever we need one of these things, well, in order to create a purchase order, I have to have a purchase order business object. Looking at the purchase request, I didn't want to lose the relationship of purchase request to the line items. So thinking about, okay, subparent, we've made this beginning to be a buzzword of recent. So subparent, purchase request, we do subparent a lot of times with a journal. I may enter a journal in a task, but I want it to be the parent's object, or I enter a journal in an incident, for instance, that's a better example. And I also want it to be in the parent or the problem. So I have subparents. So in this instance, I wanted to add a purchase request, but also have a subparent of a purchase order. So let's take a look at this one step. It's a really cool one step, so I'm excited to show this. So this one step we have in the purchase order, purchase request association. I've got it in my blueprint on our button and link labels, of course, because this is a button. And we're going to create our vendor purchase orders. So first thing, of course, I want to save. I want to make sure I have all my information in here, etc. And there's not a dirty form out there and I'm waiting for a save. And then I loved when they put this decide between multiple cases. This is really, I use this a lot with error traps. So the first thing we're going to do is save the purchase request just to make sure there's not any line items that are out there. And then we're going to evaluate to make sure there is a line item there. Because if there's not a line item, there's absolutely no use to do a purchase order at this point in time, because we don't have a vendor or line items. So we're going to take a look at our line items and count and see how many there are. And if we have more than one, then we're going to start our XML list, or at least one. And yes, I have to adjust this a little bit. So greater than or equal to 1, as long as we have one. If we don't have any line items, this is my error trap. I don't have to evaluate the one step any further. I gain efficiencies by let's just exit and throw a pop-up. Hey, you need to have these line items before you can create purchase orders. If I do have line items, then let's go ahead and evaluate the rest of the one step. We're going to start an XML list within our variables here. And the variables in 9.7, I think, is when they introduced the multiples there. Thank goodness, otherwise we have a long list, and I do have a one step. If we have enough time, I can show it today. That is a super long variable list, essentially, that I could pare down and put them in here. So we're going to start our XML list. We're going to put the header tag outside of where we're building our list, simply because we don't want it to do it every single time we're evaluating our children. So we're going to put the header tag out here. We're going to put it as a stored value because we are looking down into another XML collection. So when you would use stored values versus variables, it varies. If you're inline, we're going to see one where we're going to use a variable rather than a stored value. If you're going to use it outside of a one step, it's also a good practice to use a stored value, etc. Then we're going to look at our line items and we're going to gather all of our unique vendors. So we're going to go through each of the 50 line items just to make sure we can gather all of our vendors. And we're going to evaluate if this is a duplicate vendor or if this is a unique vendor. So setting our first variables, I'm going to get a vendor rec ID. I'm going to reset my flag to false, and I'm going to do my vendor compare. So this is how I'm going to close my list out so that I can step through a collection that will compare my vendors that I currently have on my list to see if this is a unique one or not. So as it steps through all 50 items, this essentially will loop back 50 times through each of these things with our error exit clause. So if we don't need it, it's just going to dump out. If we do need it, we're going to add it to a list. So I'm going to look at my current list of vendors that I have because my variable back here gave me a vendor list with all my XML tag and I closed it out. So I'm going to then nest down and step through that particular collection to evaluate with my action condition if this is a vendor that I already have or not. So look at the first line item. It's of course going to be blank in there. So I'm going to add that first vendor. We're going to call it CDW. So it's going to go to the next line item, which is also CDW. It's going to skip this part here, which will leave the flag false and be evaluated later. So is it one I need to add to my list? Nope, error out, go to the next one in my list. Again, this one is going to evaluate false or true, CDW, nope, I already have that one. Until I cycle all the way through and get my 4 vendors. Adding to my list essentially will put my stored value at the top, so I get all of the ones that I currently have, otherwise I'm overriding and I will only have one vendor, and give me my vendor list row, which is simply just a rec ID. So now I have all 4 of my vendors. I'm going to end my XML list. So we begin the XML list, we get the meat of the XML, and then we end it. You'll notice I have test pop-ups here and there. I do a test pop-up just to make sure as I'm creating these that I have XML within here. Look at my action condition. This is kind of a nice thing that I do as well. So if I want to keep these testing pop-ups so I can turn them on and off, I might just use created by or any field and write this as a disabled function, because created by can never equal disabled function, and that will tell any admin that comes in here, oh, he's just using this as a test and he's disabled it for the moment. Create purchase orders. So this was a step through children. This is going to be a actual step through collection. So my vendor list that I created back in these 3 steps is going to come over to create my purchase orders. We're going to set our variables at the beginning, so I get my vendor and my purchase request. So essentially my parent, and when I create a purchase order, then I will have a sub-parent variable. So to create my purchase order, and this particular one, all I'm doing is just putting in the vendor ID. So I'm creating the CDW purchase order, put the vendor ID, it automatically populates based upon the ID, can auto-populate my vendor information, address, etc. Link it to my parent of purchase request has a purchase order, so that my purchase requests can now see the purchase order I'm creating. Save it. I don't need to open this record because I want to remain on purchase request until the 4 purchase orders are created. So now we've got our sub-parent, we have our parent, which is our purchase request. Now we can link our variables. or link our 50 line items. So this one's going to go do, it went through, it created the CDW. It's going to check on the CDW and see if this is the vendor rec for that order, and if it's my parent, PR as well. And then it's going to link it. And when it links it, this particular relationship is set up that the link is PO rec ID, or sub-parent, if you will. So this purchase order ID then goes into purchase request line items, and it will go through and it will link all of the ones that it has found. So if there's 15 of the 50, I'm going to have 15 line items on this purchase order. Next vendor, until it goes through all of the vendors and all of your things are linked, etc. All of your line items are linked. So that is the button example of why we want to run this as a button. So this is one, again, I want to be able to run this from a purchase request. Click on, create my vendor purchase orders as my next step in my status, and see those purchase orders being created so that I can verify I've got 4. I can look in the purchase orders. Yep, it has all of the line items if I have to count them individually, or I could go into the purchase request line item business object that is attached to either one of the two and see if it has a new PO rec ID inserted for each of the line items. So I make sure all of my line items have been put on the PO. Okay. I can't see the chat or the questions, but I'm assuming we don't have any questions yet, Tabitha?
No, we don't have any right now.
Okay.
Did you have another one you were going to show?
I do. I've got one more that I'm going to show. So let's take a look at the last one we've got here, and that is a save action. I actually love this, Jeff. It's so awesome. A save action. So there's a map on the Map Exchange right now that does the ownership history that Excalibur has had for quite a long time. And it's the prime example of a save action one step. Problem solver thoughts, we wanted to check for ownership and update after each save if the ownership has changed on an individual or a team or a status. Status was actually added in version 2, which I think is on the exchange. I'm not for sure. I'll have to make sure and double check that. So let's take a look at this save action one step. So the map actually adds it to change request, incident, problem, and knowledge. If you are adding this, just as a side note, knowledge got broken out as a group object in 10.0. So applying this map in a 10.0 gives you an error on the knowledge. It will ask you where you want to associate it. So that one we're going to have to update probably as a version 3. And I probably would not add that one in the map at the moment, but you have problem, incident, and change still works very well within the 10.0 because we are using brand new business objects. So as an action and why an action. So assignment history, thinking about when an individual changes and I save it. Well, if I put it as an AP, I may be updated really quick as the next individual. Or a team, and I threw it over the fence to this team and they throw it over the fence to this team because they're on it within the next minute and I missed the automated action. So putting it, I wanted to, customers always ask, well, I'd like to know when the team ownership changes, when an individual ownership changes, how long it was in that other team before it got moved over, etc. And that's what this map shows. And why you put it on a save is then we can see if it got thrown over the fence and quickly got batted back. Putting on a save every time I save, whether I'm doing it as an action for an update of the team where I may be changing something on the form and the team doesn't have an automatic save with it, or the user doesn't have an automatic save with it, we'll get this and it will update our histories. So taking a look at our conditions here, we don't have a condition. Thinking about why we don't have a condition, back to what does the one step need to do? So if we were looking at the conditions, we would have to put in, well, if the owned by changes and the team changes, or the status changes, or it becomes a little bit of a complicated expression or condition. So you know what, let's run it every time and we'll figure it out on the one step using our actions of, well, if these have changed, go ahead and update. We want to make sure that we don't miss an assignment history. Execute before save. We want to execute this after save. We want to see a change. So if the team changes, I want to execute after the save has happened so that this one step will capture that team that's changed. First save and every additional save just to make sure we get it. Update history, so let's take a look in here. So as we were talking about, it's going to run every time, and it's going to create our history only if our action condition is not equal to assigned to, or actually it was something else in the old days, but now it's assigned to, temp previous owned by. So this brings up another, when we were thinking about putting this together, how are we going to, brainstorming time, how is this going to run? What do we need for this one step to be successful? Well, I don't have a way for it to see that the assigned to changed because I don't have assigned to captured anywhere currently. So I can't evaluate against it because I don't have a field. Okay, well then let's add a previously owned by. So the previous owned by doesn't get set on the first one. So you write immediately, your first save actually has, if it's assigned to an individual, has an entry because it's gone from blank to having an owned by. So that would kick this because it's not equal to previous owned by. So once we get this in there, we create our record of our business object because we want to be able to do a report against these. So a separate business object of all the changes that have been made, whether it's an individual change, a team change, or status change as well that got added to this. We're going to create a new business object and add in all of that stuff, add in the time, etc. of when it happened. So entry type, this is an owner, we've got team changes, who the new owned by was, the previous owner, etc. Start dates and end dates. So capturing all that information to be able to get how long it was in somebody else's queue, etc. And then auto-populating based upon, these are calculations that whenever you create it, it automatically calculates the durations, etc. That way we can keep them separate from team because we have our types in there. And all of that. And then of course, once you have added that, we don't want it to keep adding that every single time and having a business object created every time because we forgot to update previous. So then we're going to go to our incident form, and based on the same condition as the first one, it's going to update, sorry, it was the owned by. In the same condition as our first one, it's going to update our previously owned by to the current owner. And then it will skip it until the owner changes. The same with the team. So doing this as a save action allows us to always make sure that we're capturing it, not putting it onto a condition, adding a separate business object for reporting, all the things that we had to tie to and think about when that we can run this, and all of the things that I need to make this successful. So assignment histories, if you have your system locked down on first, second level supports, you'd have to make sure the assignment histories is available so that they can create an assignment history, etc. Seeing the tabs with on here as well, you'd have to make sure that tabs are available. All of the things that when you run a one step, the ancillary stuff that I need to have to be able to see that it was successful. Purchase orders, we can see that it created them because I added a tab to purchase request. added that relationship, and also built the relationship into whenever I create those purchase orders. And that is the end of the demos that I have. I have an extra one if we've got a little time, but I'm going to open it up for questions. And it looks like we have one, don't we, Tabitha?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were able to read it.
So let's see, we have in Cherwell out of the box functionality, journal history will added whenever any changes in assigned to field or any change in assigned team field want to know, we can able to provide the prompt or pop-up whenever assigned to field will change, prompt will pop up and add into a journal note. Okay, functionality will add whenever any changes in assigned to field. Change a field. So essentially, when you do an assigned to, right? So I'm looking at an out of the box system. If I think I'm getting the question right, so if I assign it to somebody else, which I think this is the new form, I can't remember on 9.7. I'm using 9.7 because that was where I don't have all my stuff upgraded to the 10.1.1. But if we do an assign to, since this is a button, you can have it do anything that you want to behind it. If this was a drop down, so in my overview down here, when it comes up, so if it was a drop down, there's nothing you can do because there's not a one step behind it. So like down here at the bottom, if I just assign this one here and I saved it, which this save action, it's a button, but it's actually an execute command that does a save. I could put a pop-up behind that or something behind that. Then it doesn't do anything. But since we can do an assign to and a own by up here, any change to the field, once new, we can provide the prompt or pop-up whenever assigned to field will change, prompt will pop up and add into a journal note. You could do that whenever you click assign to, you could pop up and add a journal note that it got updated. You also have the history. So this particular one, it's, do I need to do that within my one step? Because the journal note will automatically be created if you have it turned on for track history of owned by. It's automatically going to add into your journal. Now, if you want to pop up based upon, are you sure you want to reassign this? Then yes, the same kind of thing. You can do it within the one step. You just do that decision tree or a pop up first, and if you could actually use command buttons that if a yes or no, I could then exit out and not run the entire script or keep going. So I really love those, the side betweens on that. I hope I answered that.
So before we kind of give our closing remarks, did you want to do that additional demo? And then if anyone thinks from the audience that they have questions later, you can always email Excalibur from the website form, or tomorrow you'll also receive contact information to reach out to me if you have any additional questions that you just think of randomly.
Sure. Okay. There's no other questions. Then I'm going to show this last one, and it's really one that I've shown a couple of times, and it became a scenario. And really, I continue to look at the efficiencies of this because this is such a huge one step that it needs to be broken out a little bit because it does run a little bit long. So this is from the Booker map that we've recently published out. And what it wanted to do was do recreating meetings. Recreating meetings on the surface sounds complicated. And when you get into it, it's super complicated because of all the things that you have to evaluate inline Some things that I'm going to offload to an AP, such as the emails of the scheduled, etc., to gain better efficiencies in it. But the create one recurring had to look at daily, weekly, monthly, and then get values based upon what I have within the daily, weekly, monthly. And not only that, if I have invitees added to my meeting, I want to carry my invitees over to the next meeting. And by the way, if I have additional resources, so not only the resources that I currently have in here that are static, but do I need a podium? Do I need voter, I forget what they're called, but buttons, something like that. Do I need additional resources? So if I have additional resources there, I also need to carry those down to my meeting request. So I'm going to show this. I'm not going to go in depth in this, but to see, and back in the day, we again had to do variables as their own single. So this is a super, I don't know if you can see up here at the bottom, long one step, mostly of the variables that you have in here. But this one step had first, of course, to look at my error and exit out if I've got an error or I don't have the stuff that I need. It involves one XML list here, two XML lists here. So I have my additional resources, get that, gather up my invitees list, get that, because my additional resources, I only have so many. So it not only has to evaluate, do I have enough for this meeting request, but as you make the new ones, has it already been checked out for those future dates? So it has to build that XML out as well to, and as we get in, so this is just the top layer. Each layer, this particular one is not so bad, but each layer you get into it. So invitees list, I'm gonna pull that up. Do all of my variables that I have down through here, and then build a date list. So if I need it on the second Thursday of the month, then I need to get all of those dates and build that into an XML list as well. Then make sure that I have dates, because if I don't have dates, then error out, there's something that's happened, gone badly wrong, and you need to let the admin know. And then once we have our XML list and everything's closed out and it's good to go, then we're going to go into our date list, as well as pull in our additional resources and our vendors. And as you can see, this just goes everywhere as a spaghetti strap here. So we then will walk through each of our dates to make sure that the room is open. If it's not open, then it's unavailable. We will then pop up and look at other available rooms. So look at the available rooms based upon if the room has that time slot available and it's supposed to be available during the time. So we're evaluating any number of variables. This one to think through, it took a long while. So if there are conference rooms available, then pop up the conference rooms that are available so that we can create that meeting request and put it as a different one, put it within the same group, check for an approval if that particular one needed approval, add in our additional resources, our invitees, etc. If one was not available, then add it to the update the unavailable conference room list that we'll use later in the one step that you'll be able to print out so you'll know the ones that you weren't able to schedule for those days within the recurring. Same as if it is available, we're going to create the meeting request. Do all of the things again, additional resources, etc. So efficiencies gained in this one that we look at is, what is it that I can do inline, or what is it that I can offload? So there are several emails in here that I don't have to do inline because I don't request anything additional, that I could say, okay, if the room is scheduled, here's the template, that's an AP. That gains additional efficiency because this runs so long to begin with because of all the things that are doing in it. So are you going to get it out right the first time? And this is why I put this out here. Are you going to right the first? No, absolutely not. Just like the little bird that kept falling, you're going to step, 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 and you're going to fall because it's going to be so long. And where can I gain additional efficiencies? You'll continue to look at your one step and continue to look at it and try to get it as best as you can. Okay, another question. So in one steps, if we will use multiple store variables, it will affect a performance issue. It depends on how you're getting the variable. That's a hard question to answer simply because if I get something straight from the form, it's not going to affect your performance. Because all of the variables that I use for XML lists or JSON lists, so if I have to step through 100 children to build that variable, you're going to now get a performance issue. So the question is a hard one to answer because it's where are you getting the information to populate that variable? Or am I making a web call that goes out to a website? Now I'm dependent on how fast my internet connection is, how fast their servers are to pull that back as well to stuff into a variable for me to use. So, and folks,
All right.
that is the end of everything that I have, all of the demos that I have as well. And pretty much my last thoughts were kind of wrapped in there. You will continuously update your one steps. If you can kind of think out the box or out in the very beginning, where can I gain the efficiencies based upon when I can run this, how I can run this, what am I needing to run these things, keeping my security in mind, I have to have access to it. What fields that I need to make this successful? What other things that I need to make this successful? About 7 times out of 10, you might get the right one the first time. But again, you're going to be evolving it because you'll forget about something. You'll think of something on the fly that makes it better. This has been the 3rd iteration of the reoccurring because of the things that we've thought about and how to get it better. So,
I just want to thank you, Mike, for the presentation today, and then everybody that hopped on. And then I will be sending a copy of the recording so you can share with your team or your colleagues. And just thank you for attending the webinar today.